All right, everyone, get ready for a deep dive. We're going to explore this new system called OmniThink. It's all about machine writing, but with a twist. You know how you're always looking to expand your knowledge? Well, this is pushing the boundaries of what AI can do with writing. It's almost like AI that can think while it writes, instead of just regurgitating information.
Yeah, it's really trying to mimic how we as humans learn. I mean, you wouldn't just read one article and be like, okay, I'm done. I know everything now, right? We explore, we think about it, make connections. That's what they're trying to do with OmniThink.
That's where things get really cool, right?
Yeah.
Because the current methods, like Raraback, they're pretty good at pulling in data, but sometimes they get stuck just repeating the same points.
Yeah.
Like, remember that example from one of the articles that was about that phrase about AlphaFold? AlphaFold was developed by DeepMind, and it kept popping up over and over again in this storm-generated piece. That could get kind of annoying if you were reading that, right?
Exactly. And that's where the idea of knowledge density comes in, KD. It's all about like the ratio of good stuff to the overall length. So think about it like this. Would you rather have a really dense, nutrient-packed smoothie, or would you rather eat like a mountain of fruit just to get the same amount of vitamins?
I think I'd go for the smoothie.
Right.
Who wants to wade through all that extra stuff when you can get to the good stuff?
Exactly. High KD means you get more out of it, more efficient learning. And that's what OmniThink's all about.
So how does this thing actually work? I'm kind of picturing like a superpowered AI brain just crunching through data at warp speed.
It's actually more like a tree, It starts with what they call a root node, which is basically your main topic. And then it branches out to all these subtopics, kind of creating this like information tree.
Oh, interesting.
So, for example, let's say our topic is presidents of the United States over the years. OmniThink might start with early presidents, then maybe go to like expansion and Civil War, early 20th century, and so on.
Oh, I see. It keeps branching out, learning more as it goes.
Yeah, constantly expanding, and at the same time, it's reflecting on what it's learned.
So it's like it's making a mind map, but on a massive scale. And for each of those branches, it's pulling in info from all sorts of sources and putting it in this conceptual pool.
Exactly. And here's the thing. It's not just gathering anything and everything. It's constantly reflecting, like asking itself, okay, what's the most important part here? Are there any other areas I should explore? Kind of like a human writer would, stepping back and thinking critically about the research.
So it's not just about how much information it has. It's about the quality and making those connections between ideas.
Exactly.
That's pretty amazing. But how does it go from all this information to actually writing a coherent article?
That's where the outline comes in. It uses all that knowledge it's gathered to create a structured outline for the article, so it makes sure it flows logically and covering all the key points.
It's like an architect making a blueprint before they build a house, right?
Right.
You got to have that foundation to make sure everything's in the right spot.
Exactly. And then it moves on to the actual writing part, uses all that information from the tree to write each section. Then it goes back and polishes things up, makes sure there's no redundancy and the language is smooth.
So it's like it's mirroring the entire process of how we research and write. Brainstorming, outlining, composing, and even editing. Pretty impressive. But does it actually work? That's the big question.
Well, they put it to the test, comparing it to other methods like Storm and CoStorm using this data set called WildSeek.
And don't leave me hanging.
It actually did really well. It scored higher in things like novelty, relevance, and of course, knowledge density, especially when they paired it with powerful LLMs like GPT-4.
Wow. So potentially more informative and engaging articles and none of that repetitive stuff we see with other methods.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about the numbers. They also had actual humans evaluate the articles, and people found the ones generated by OmniThink to be more insightful, and broader in their coverage.
So it's not just passing some test. It's actually creating something people find valuable.
Exactly. Now, we should mention it's not perfect. One limitation is that it still relies a lot on search engines. So if the info it finds isn't that great, the output's going to suffer.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's still early days. But it sounds like they're already working on some of these limitations. What else are they looking at?
Well, one thing is the writing style. Right now, it's very formal, like, academic, fine for research papers, but maybe not for a blog post or something.
Yeah, you wouldn't want a bedtime story to sound like a scientific paper.
Exactly. So finding ways to make it more adaptable, to different audiences is definitely on their radar. Now, here's where things get even more interesting. They also took a closer look at how expansion and reflection work individually within OmniThink.
Okay, I'm all ears. What did they find?
They found that reflection is really key for like novelty and information diversity. It's like the model is looking at everything from different angles, which leads to more unique and insightful connections.
Kind of like a human writer who takes the time to really think things through and challenge their own assumptions.
Right, exactly. While expansion is all about depth and relevance, it makes sure the info gathering is on the right track so the content is more detailed and accurate.
So both of these processes are essential, working together to create something really valuable. It's amazing how much we can learn from watching how machines do these things.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, could understanding these processes in LLMs actually help us improve our own learning and thinking?
That is a great question, and one that we're going to explore further as we continue our deep dive into OmniThink.
So we've talked about how OmniThink sort of mimics human thinking. But what about the future? What's next for this tech?
Well, the research actually hints at some pretty cool stuff they're working on. One thing is like integrating deeper reasoning into LLMs.
Deeper reasoning. That sounds kind of intense. What does that actually mean in practice?
So like imagine if the AI could not only gather information and put it together, but also understand the complex relationships between those ideas, like make inferences, maybe even do a little role playing to come up with even more nuanced content. It's about moving beyond just copying how we write and getting closer to how we actually think.
So the AI isn't just a writer. It's like becoming a thinker.
Right.
It's a whole other level. What other advancements are they looking into?
They're also looking at using what they call multimodal information.
Multimodal. Is that like something to do with those new phones everyone's talking about?
Well, kind of. In this case, it means going beyond just text. Imagine an AI that can process images, videos, audio, even data from like scientific experiments, and then weave all that into the writing.
Whoa. So you could be reading an article and like see actual footage right there in the text.
Yeah, exactly. It could be super immersive, like a multimedia experience.
This is blowing my mind. And you mentioned one more thing for the future, right? Something about personalized writing styles.
Yeah, that's a big one. Right now, OmniThink has a very specific style, very formal, academic,
Yeah.
which is great for some stuff, but not everything.
You wouldn't want all writing to sound like a research paper.
Exactly. So they're working on making it more adaptable. Like, imagine an LLM that can adjust its style depending on who it's writing for and what it's writing about.
So like choosing a setting, like conversational, persuasive, or even humorous.
Exactly. You could have a research paper that's easy for anyone to understand, or a blog post that's funny and engaging, even a children's book in the style of your favorite author.
The possibilities are like endless. This whole deep dive has been really insightful. It makes you realize how fast this whole field of machine writing is changing, from just generating basic text to AI that's starting to think like us.
It really is amazing, and it makes you think about how much potential there is.
It's exciting,
Mm-hmm.
but also a little bit daunting,
Yeah. I think that's a fair assessment, but I think it can be a really good thing if we use it wisely.
Speaking of using it wisely, earlier you asked a really interesting question. Could learning from machines actually help us become better learners? I've been thinking about that a lot.
It's a good question, for sure. We always talk about machines becoming more human-like, but maybe there's something to be said for humans learning from machines.
Yeah, like the way OmniThink breaks down these complex tasks into like manageable steps. Gather information, think about it, organize it, then write it. It's a very structured and efficient approach.
Right. Maybe we could apply that to our own learning. Instead of just trying to absorb everything at once, what if we took a more deliberate approach, like OmniThink, with, targeted exploration and reflection built in?
That's a good point. We don't always give ourselves enough time for those steps, do we? We just jump in head first and then wonder why we feel overwhelmed. Maybe learning from AI like OmniThink can help us become more efficient learners.
That's an interesting possibility, and one that I think is worth exploring further. After all, the goal of this step dive is to expand the boundaries of knowledge, both in terms of what we know and how we learn.
Totally. And while we're talking about expanding boundaries, I think it's important to remember that these advances also come with some responsibilities.
Definitely. As with any powerful technology, we have to be aware of the downsides and think about how to avoid them as things keep developing.
We need to have those conversations, about what could go wrong and how to make sure we're using this technology for good. But for now, let's leave our listeners with that thought-provoking question you brought up. Could learning from machines actually make us better learners?
It's a question that could have some really unexpected, maybe even transformative answers. And that's the beauty of exploring new knowledge, right? There's always something new to learn, a new way of looking at things.
Exactly. Who knows what's next? I'm excited to find out.
Me too.
Mm.
The future of machine writing and AI in general is full of potential.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this part of our deep dive. We've covered a lot today, from how OmniThink works to its potential impact on how we write and even learn.
It's been a great conversation.
And remember, this is just the beginning. There's a whole world of knowledge out there, and we'll be here to guide you through it one deep dive at a time.
So keep those minds curious and stay tuned for more deep dives into the world of knowledge and tech. Until next time.
Until next time. It's amazing to think how this could, change the world, but it's also a little bit, like opening Pandora's box. What are some of the challenges we might face as AI writing gets even more sophisticated?
One thing people always bring up is jobs, Like if AI can write really well, what happens to journalists, copywriters, even novelists?
That's a good point. Some people might be worried about, being replaced by robots,
Yeah.
but I wonder if it's not so much about replacement, but more like transformation. Could we see more collaboration between humans and AI? Each playing to their strengths and creating something even better together.
Yeah, definitely. Imagine combining human creativity with AI's ability to process tons of information and just churn out text. It could lead to totally new ways of storytelling and creating content.
It'd be like having a co-writer who can, access the entire internet and write perfectly grammatically correct sentences whenever you need them. Talk about a productivity boost. But that brings up another question. Authorship. Who owns the rights to something that's written with AI?
That's a big one, and we're going to have to figure that out as a society. Is it a true collaboration where both the human and the AI share ownership, or is the AI more like a tool and the human author is still the one in control? There are a lot of legal and ethical things to think about as this tech becomes more common.
It's going to take a lot of careful thought and open discussion to make sure we're doing things the right way. We need clear rules that are fair to both, the human and the AI.
Absolutely. And then there's the potential for misuse. We've already seen AI being used to create things like deep fakes, spreading misinformation. What if someone used it to create fake news articles, propaganda that's so good you can't even tell it's fake?
That's a scary thought. It's like a whole new kind of information war where you can't even tell what's real anymore.
Yeah, it's a real concern. It means we have to be even more careful about media literacy and critical thinking, questioning our sources, looking for evidence. All that stuff is going to be even more important in a world where AI is creating content.
It feels like we're at a crossroads, This AI writing stuff could be amazing, but there are risks too. It's up to us to make sure we're using it responsibly.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The future of AI is really in our hands. We have to decide how to use it and make sure it aligns with what we want as a society.
It's a responsibility we all share. We need to stay informed, engaged, and be willing to have those tough conversations.
I agree. And hopefully this deep dive has got people thinking about some of those issues.
I think it has. We've covered a lot, from the technical side of OmniThink to the bigger questions about the future of writing, learning, even society as a whole.
It's been a fascinating discussion.
And remember, this is just the start. AI is changing so fast, who knows what's coming next? The possibilities are both exciting and a little bit, intimidating.
Exactly. So stay curious, everyone, and join us again for more deep dives into the world of knowledge and tech. Until next time.
Until next time.